The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional travel, medical, legal, or financial advice. Traveling to Peru involves inherent risks, including but not limited to health complications related to high altitude, personal safety concerns, and fluctuations in local laws and entry requirements. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence, consult with a qualified healthcare professional regarding vaccinations and altitude sickness protocols, and review the latest travel advisories from the United States Department of State and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention before finalizing any travel plans. The creators of this content are not responsible for any adverse outcomes resulting from the use of this information. Every year, thousands of American travelers land at Jorge Chávez International Airport in Lima, brimming with excitement for a bucket list journey to the heart of the Inca Empire, only to have their entire $5,000 itinerary collapse within the first 48 hours. Imagine spending 6 months coordinating flights, securing a highly coveted entrance ticket to Machu Picchu, and booking a luxury train through the Sacred Valley, only to find yourself confined to a hotel room in Cusco, clutching an oxygen tank and watching your non-refundable reservations tick away. This is not a rare horror story. It is a statistical reality for a significant portion of U.S. tourists who treat a trip to the Andes like a weekend getaway to the Rockies. The stakes in Peru are uniquely high because the geography is unforgiving and the logistics are governed by a rigid, bureaucratic system that does not accommodate the American expectation of on-the-fly adjustments. If you miss your designated train window or your specific time slot for the Citadel, there is no manager to speak to and no waitlist to join. You are simply out of luck. Most travel guides will tell you to pack a raincoat and bring comfortable shoes. This is not that kind of guide. This is a deep dive masterclass designed for the American traveler who understands that the difference between a transformative life experience and a logistical nightmare lies in the granular details that most influencers gloss over. We are going to look at why your domestic flight from Lima to Cusco is the most dangerous part of your itinerary, not because of the aircraft, but because of the physiological toll it takes on your body. We will analyze the historical trends of the Peruvian protest cycles that can shut down the entire rail network in a single afternoon, and how to build a resilient itinerary that can survive a national strike. We are going to break down the complex web of the new circuit system at Machu Picchu, which was overhauled recently to manage over-tourism, leaving thousands of travelers holding tickets for paths that do not even allow them to see the classic postcard view of the ruins. The problem this video solves for you today is the information gap, created by outdated blogs and superficial social media posts. For a U.S. citizen, the transition from a highly structured, service-oriented economy to the nuanced, relationship-based, and often unpredictable environment of Peru can be jarring. You are likely coming from a culture where confirmed means guaranteed, but in the high-altitude regions of the Andes, confirmed is merely a statement of intent subject to weather, political climate, and infrastructure limitations. By the end of this series, you will possess a sophisticated understanding of the Peru pivot, the ability to navigate these shifts without losing your sanity or your investment. We will move past the cliches of llamas and colorful textiles and into the hard data of travel insurance requirements, the specific nuances of the Peruvian sol versus the US dollar in a cash-heavy economy, and the legal realities of your US passport's expiration date that could get you deported before you even leave the Lima Customs Hall. Let's talk about the Cusco trap. Most American travelers follow a standard Lima to Cusco flight path. You leave a major hub like JFK, LAX, or Miami on a red-eye, land in Lima at 5 a.m., and immediately board a connecting flight to Cusco. In less than 6 hours, you have ascended from sea level to over 11,000 feet. To put this in perspective for the U.S. audience, Denver, Colorado, the mile-high city, is approximately 5,200 feet. You are nearly doubling that altitude in a single morning. Historical trends among U.S. travelers show that approximately 25% of visitors experience some form of acute mountain sickness, and the number is significantly higher for those who do not allow for a gradual acclimatization period. This isn't just about a headache. It is about a physiological state that can lead to pulmonary or cerebral edema if ignored. We are going to examine the case studies of travelers who ignored the Sacred Valley First strategy and ended up hospitalized, and why the most expensive mistake you can make is trying to power through the first day. Furthermore, we must address the bureaucracy of the sacred. In the United States, we are used to a certain level of digital integration. You expect an app for everything. In Peru, particularly when dealing with the Ministry of Culture, You are entering a world of physical stamps, specific paper requirements, and non-transferable permits that are tied directly to your passport number. If you renew your passport between the time you book your Machu Picchu ticket and the time you arrive at the gate, and you do not have the physical old passport with you, you will be denied entry. There are no exceptions. This video will provide a step-by-step checklist on how to manage your digital and physical documentation to ensure that a simple clerical error doesn't end your trip. We will also explore the reality of the Boleto Turístico del Cusco, a mandatory tourist ticket that covers 16 different sites but notably excludes the one site everyone actually wants to see, Machu Picchu. Understanding how these separate ticketing systems interact is essential for budgeting both your time and your money. We are also going to dive deep into the financial architecture of your trip. Many Americans assume that their premium credit cards will be accepted everywhere because it is a tourist destination. While that is true in the five-star hotels of Miraflores, it is decidedly false the moment you step into the markets of Pisac or the smaller cafes of Ollantaytambo. We will discuss the ATM scams and the dynamic currency conversion traps that can cost you an extra 10 to 15% on every transaction if you don't know which button to press. We will analyze the historical exchange rate fluctuations between the sol and the dollar and why carrying crisp, unblemished, high-denomination U.S. bills is actually a strategic move in certain parts of the country. This is part 1 of a 10-part deep dive. We are setting the foundation here because you cannot understand the how of traveling to Peru until you understand the why of the risks involved. We are going to move through every logistical hurdle, from the specific vaccinations you didn't know you needed for the Amazonian regions, to the hidden language barrier where gringo pricing meets the reality of local negotiation. We are here to ensure that when you finally stand on that ridge overlooking the 15th century Incan citadel, you are doing so with a clear head, a full stomach, and the confidence that you haven't just followed a trail, but have mastered the environment. This is the ultimate blueprint for the American traveler. Prepare to unlearn what you think you know about international travel, as we strip away the tourism marketing and look at the raw, beautiful, and complex reality of Peru. Let's begin with the most significant physiological hurdle you will face: the invisible barrier of altitude. Imagine Alex, a 32-year-old fitness enthusiast from Chicago. It is June 2026, and Alex has spent the last year training for the Inca Trail. He is in the best shape of his life, boasts a resting heart rate of 55, and has hiked the tallest peaks in the Appalachians. Alex lands in Cusco at 11,152 feet and assumes his physical conditioning will act as a shield. Within 4 hours, Alex is experiencing a localized, throbbing pressure behind his eyes. By dinner, he is nauseated, unable to keep down a simple plate of alpaca steak, and his blood oxygen saturation has dipped into the low 80s. Alex represents a common historical trend among U.S. travelers who mistake physical fitness for altitude resilience. In reality, fitness has zero correlation with how your body adapts to thin air. In fact, some case studies suggest that highly fit individuals may struggle more because they tend to overexert themselves early, pushing their cardiovascular system into a deficit before the body can compensate. The science of the Peruvian Andes is unforgiving. At sea level in Lima, the atmospheric pressure is approximately 101 kilopascals, providing ample oxygen with every breath. In Cusco, that pressure drops significantly, meaning there are roughly 40% fewer oxygen molecules in every cubic inch of air. Your body's immediate response is to increase your breathing rate and heart rate, a process known as the acute ventilatory response. However, the long-term solution your body seeks is the production of more red blood cells to carry what little oxygen is available. This process takes days, not hours. If you follow the standard American vacation mindset of hitting the ground running, you are effectively starving your brain and muscles of the fuel they need to function. The potential outcome of a poorly managed arrival is a diagnosis of soroche, or acute mountain sickness. To avoid this, you must implement the Sacred Valley pivot. Instead of staying in Cusco upon arrival, you should immediately board a prearranged car and descend to the Sacred Valley, specifically to towns like Urubamba or Ollantaytambo. These locations sit at approximately 9,000 feet. While that still sounds high, the difference between 9,000 and 11,000 feet is the threshold between comfort and crisis for the human body. By spending your first 2 to 3 nights in the valley, you allow your kidneys to begin the chemical process of bicarbonate diuresis, which helps balance your blood pH and allows for a smoother transition to higher elevations later. In 2026, the medical landscape for travelers has evolved, but the core advice remains consistent. Consult a travel medicine specialist at least 6 weeks before departure. You will likely discuss acetazolamide, a medication that forces the kidneys to excrete bicarbonate, effectively tricking the body into breathing deeper and faster to kickstart acclimatization. Historical trends show that travelers who begin a low dose of this medication 24 hours before their ascent to Cusco report significantly fewer symptoms. However, you must also respect the local wisdom. You will see baskets of dried coca leaves in every hotel lobby. While the US government once viewed these with skepticism, they are a fundamental part of Andean culture and a mild stimulant that can help with vasoconstriction and energy levels. But a word of caution for the 2026 traveler. While drinking coca tea is a staple of the experience, consuming large quantities can lead to a positive result on a drug test for cocaine metabolites upon your return to the United States. If your career requires strict drug screening, this is a legal reality you must weigh before participating in the local customs. Now, let's pivot to the second critical pillar: the bureaucracy of entry and the financial implications of your passport. Meet Sarah from Austin, Texas. It is late July 2026, the peak of the Peruvian winter and the busiest travel month. Sarah arrives at the check-in counter at Austin Bergstrom International Airport, ready for her flight to Lima. The gate agent looks at her passport and points to the expiration date, January 15, 2027. Sarah points out that her trip ends in August 2026, so she has 5 months of validity remaining. The agent shakes her head and denies boarding. This is a catastrophic failure that occurs to hundreds of Americans every year. Peru strictly enforces a rule that your passport must be valid for at least 6 months beyond the date of entry. There is no flexibility here. There is no waiver. If you have 5 months and 29 days, the Peruvian migration system will flag you, and the airline, fearing heavy fines, will not let you on the plane. Step 1 of your deep dive preparation must be a physical inspection of your passport today. If it expires any time within 7 months of your planned return, renew it immediately. Furthermore, in 2026, the way you enter the country has become almost entirely digital. The days of the colorful physical paper slip known as the Tarjeta Andina de Migration are largely over, replaced by the TAM virtual. When you pass through immigration at Jorge Chávez International Airport, the officer may not even stamp your passport. This creates a moment of panic for many U.S. travelers who feel they haven't officially arrived. However, your entry is recorded in an internal database. This digital record is more than just a legal formality. It is a financial instrument. Under Peruvian law, foreign tourists are exempt from the 18% IGV, or general sales tax on hotel stays in certain tour packages. To qualify for this exemption, you must prove you are a non-resident by showing your foreign passport and your entry record. In 2026, hotels will often ask to scan your passport and will pull your digital entry record from the migration's website. If there is a glitch in the system or if you entered on a different type of visa, you could be hit with an unexpected 18% surcharge on your entire lodging bill. Imagine a $3,000 hotel stay suddenly jumping by $540 because of a clerical error at the border. Always ask the immigration officer to confirm your entry is recorded as a tourist, and, if possible, take a screenshot of your digital entry record on the official migrations portal as soon as you have internet access. Another detail that catches Americans off guard is the physical condition of their passport. In the United States, we tend to view our passports as rugged documents. We toss them into bags and let the edges fray. In Peru, a passport with a significant ink smudge, a small tear on the photo page, or a cover that is peeling back can be deemed invalid by picky officials at the Machu Picchu entrance or by local airlines. There are case studies of travelers being forced to visit the U.S. Embassy in Lima to get an emergency replacement passport midway through their trip because a local train conductor refused to accept a damaged document. Treat your passport like a fragile piece of high-value electronics. Keep it in a waterproof, rigid protector at all times. As we look toward the logistics of moving within the country, we hit a massive cultural wall: the reality of the Peruvian currency and the secret war against the US dollar. Most Americans assume that because the dollar is a global reserve currency, it will be welcomed with open arms. In reality, attempting to pay with dollars in Peru can be one of the most frustrating experiences of your life, not because the money isn't valued, but because the standards for the physical bills are impossibly high. If your $20 bill has a microscopic tear, less than a millimeter, it will be rejected by every bank, every exchange house, and every street vendor in the country. This creates a fascinating economic paradox where a $100 bill with a tiny crease is worth exactly zero in the city of Cusco. This leads us directly into the complex world of the Peruvian Sol, and why your credit card might be your worst enemy in the high Andes. In the next part, we are going to break down the specific ATM networks that won't skim your data, the mystery of why your premium travel card keeps getting declined in the Sacred Valley, and the exact step-by-step process to getting the best exchange rate without falling for the predatory kiosks at the airport. We will also examine the reality of the two-tiered pricing system that governs everything from water bottles to train tickets, and how your American accent can sometimes cost you double if you don't know the silent rules of the Peruvian market. If you think you've budgeted correctly, wait until you see the hidden costs of the Andean transit system. To understand the financial landscape of Peru in 2026, you must first recognize that you are entering a dual-currency economy that is simultaneously hypermodern and deeply traditional. Imagine John, a freelance architect from Seattle. John is a seasoned traveler who arrives in Lima with $2,000 in cash, neatly organized in his wallet. He has heard that the US dollar is king, and he expects to use it as a universal backup. On his first afternoon in Miraflores, John attempts to pay for a high-end dinner with a crisp $50 bill. The waiter takes the bill, holds it up to the light, and points to a microscopic tear, no longer than 2 millimeters on the upper left corner. He politely refuses the bill. John tries another 50. This one has a small ink mark from a teller's pen. Refused again. This is the reality of the US dollar in Peru. It is only a valid form of currency if it is in what collectors would call mint condition. Historical trends in the Peruvian banking sector show a profound fear of counterfeit US currency, leading to a national policy among businesses where any bill with the slightest imperfection is considered a liability. If you are bringing cash from the United States, you must visit your local bank branch and specifically request uncirculated, high-denomination bills. Small tears, heavy creases, stamps, or even natural wear and tear will render your money useless at banks and reputable exchange houses. There is a secondary market for these damaged bills in the streets of downtown Lima, but the potential outcome is a 20 to 30% loss on the exchange rate as these cambistas charge a massive premium to take the risk of depositing them. For the 2026 traveler, your cash strategy should not be about quantity, but about physical perfection. When you decide to exchange your pristine dollars for the local currency, the sol, you face the gauntlet of the exchange rate. The first mistake most Americans make is using the exchange kiosks immediately after clearing customs at the airport. Data suggests these kiosks can offer rates up to 15% worse than the mid-market rate. Instead, look for the formal casas de cambio in established neighborhoods or use the authorized street money changers in Miraflores, who wear bright magenta or blue vests with official city identification. These individuals often offer the most competitive rates in the country, but you must be vigilant. A common case study in traveler error involves accepting a stack of sols and failing to check for counterfeits. By 2026, counterfeit detection has become a necessary skill. You must feel for the raised texture on the Banco Central de Reserva del Peru. Text and look for the color-shifting ink on the denomination number. If the bill feels like standard printer paper or the watermark looks blurry, do not accept it. However, relying on cash is only half the battle. You will likely rely heavily on your US-issued credit and debit cards, but the Peruvian ATM network is a minefield of hidden fees. Imagine you are in Cusco and you need 500 sols for a mountain bike tour. You walk up to a GlobalNet ATM, which are ubiquitous across the country. These machines are notorious for charging some of the highest transaction fees in South America, often upwards of $7 to $10 per withdrawal, regardless of what your bank at home charges. Furthermore, these machines will almost always present you with a screen asking if you would like to accept the conversion to US dollars. This is known as dynamic currency conversion. If you click Accept, the machine will apply its own arbitrary, inflated exchange rate, potentially costing you an extra $20 on a single withdrawal. You must always select Decline Conversion or Continue without conversion. This forces the transaction to be processed in sols, allowing your home bank to handle the conversion at a much fairer rate. For the best outcomes, historical trends suggest using ATMs owned by BCP, Banco de Crédito del Peru, or Scotiabank. These banks typically have higher withdrawal limits and lower internal fees. However, be aware that in 2026, many ATMs in high-altitude regions like Puno or Juarez are prone to running out of cash during festival seasons or national holidays. Never let your cash reserves dip below a 2-day supply, as the digital infrastructure in the mountains can be as thin as the air. As you move through the markets of the Sacred Valley or the street food stalls of Arequipa, you will encounter the digital divide. In 2026, Peru has almost entirely transitioned to a mobile payment system called Yape or Plin. You will see QR codes on everything from high-end jewelry displays to the carts of fruit vendors. For a Peruvian local, this is a seamless experience. For you, the US traveler, it is a source of immense frustration. These apps generally require a Peruvian bank account and a local DNI or identity number to register. This means that while the country has moved toward a cashless society, you are often stuck in the cash-only lane. While some vendors are beginning to accept international digital wallets, the historical trend remains that small businesses will either demand cash or charge a transaction fee of 5 to 8% to use a credit card machine. This surcharge is not a scam. It is a reflection of the high cost of processing international transactions for small Peruvian businesses. If you see a sign that says 5% additional con tarjeta, they are being transparent about the cost of the POS system. To navigate this, you must master the art of the Sol's first budget. Use your credit card for major expenses like your hotel in the Sacred Valley or your luxury train tickets to Aguascalientes, but always keep a thick roll of small denomination sols, 10s and 20s, for everything else. Large bills like the 100 sol note are notoriously difficult to break. A street vendor selling a 3-sol bottle of water will almost never have change for 100. You will find yourself in the absurd position of being rich in large bills but unable to buy a snack or pay for a public restroom, which usually costs 1 sol. Finally, we must address the gringo pricing phenomenon, which is less about malice and more about a flexible economic culture. In the United States, the price on the tag is the price you pay. In Peru, particularly in markets, the price is a conversation. However, there is a silent rule. You do not haggle over food in a restaurant or items with printed price tags in a grocery store. You haggle in the artisanal markets where goods are unpriced. If a vendor sees an American accent and a shiny new smartphone, the initial price may be 30% higher than the local rate. This is where your case study and negotiation begins. The key is not to be aggressive but to be knowledgeable. If you know that a high-quality baby alpaca scarf should cost around 60 to 80 sols, and the vendor asks for 150, you smile, offer 50, and meet in the middle. Understanding these financial nuances is the difference between feeling like a target and feeling like a guest. But even if you master the money, you still have to move through the country. The physical act of getting from point A to point B in Peru is a logistical puzzle that involves high-altitude flights, winding mountain roads, and a rail system that operates on a logic all its own. In the next part, we are going to dive into the transit trap. We will look at why your domestic flight to Cusco might be canceled without a text notification, the specific safe taxi, apps you need to download before you land, and the harrowing reality of the Peruvian bus system, where the difference between a luxury sleeper and a standard coach can be a matter of life and limb on the Andean switchbacks. If you think your commute in LA or New York is stressful, wait until you see the road to the Amazon. To understand the logistical heartbeat of Peru in 2026, you must realize that the country's geography is its greatest beauty and its most significant obstacle. Moving between the coastal desert, the Andean peaks, and the Amazonian basin requires more than just a ticket. It requires a strategic understanding of the transit systems that govern the region. Let's look at Mark from Phoenix, Arizona. Mark is a project manager who prides himself on efficiency. He schedules a tight itinerary for June 2026. A 6 a.m. arrival in Lima from LAX, a 9 a.m. connection to Cusco, and a pre-booked private tour of the Sacred Valley starting at noon. On paper, Mark is a hero of productivity. In reality, Mark has ignored the historical trends of the Cusco wind patterns. Domestic air travel in Peru is anchored by Jorge Chávez International Airport in Lima, which in 2026 has transitioned much of its operations to the massive new terminal expansion. While the facility is world-class, the destination airports are not always as accommodating. Cusco's Alejandro Velasco Estete International Airport is situated in a high-altitude bowl surrounded by mountains. This creates a phenomenon known as wind shear, particularly in the afternoons. Historical trends show that flights scheduled after 2 p.m. have a significantly higher percentage of delays or cancellations compared to morning flights. If Mark's 9 a.m. flight is delayed by just 2 hours due to fog in Lima, a common occurrence from May to September, the afternoon winds in Cusco may prevent the plane from landing entirely. The potential outcome is a flight that circles the Andes and returns to Lima, effectively vaporizing 24 hours of Mark's non-refundable itinerary. Step 1 for the 2026 traveler. Always book the earliest possible flight to Cusco. The 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. slots are not just for early birds. They are your best statistical chance of actually reaching the mountains that day. Furthermore, we must discuss the baggage trap of Peruvian low-cost carriers. In 2026, airlines like Sky Airline and JetSmart have expanded their reach, offering incredibly low base fares that appeal to the American budget. However, these fares are often restrictive to the point of being predatory if you are not prepared. Imagine you arrive at the gate with the standard US-sized carry-on. In the United States, we are used to a certain level of leniency. In Peru, these airlines use metal sizing frames with zero tolerance. If your wheels stick out by half an inch, you will be charged a gate check fee that can often exceed the original price of the ticket. Even more critical is the weight limit. While U.S. domestic carriers rarely weigh carry-on bags, Peruvian domestic flights often enforce a 10-kilogram limit for cabin luggage. If you are carrying heavy camera gear or hiking boots in your carry-on, you could be hit with a $60 fee at the boarding gate. Case studies of U.S. travelers show that the most cost-effective strategy is to book the plus or full fare tiers up front, which include checked bags and seat selection, rather than trying to save $20 on a base fare only to pay triple at the airport. Now let's transition to the moment you step out of the terminal and into the Shark Tank of Peruvian taxis. Imagine Elena, a solo traveler from Miami. As she exits the baggage claim in Lima, she is swarmed by men in suits holding official-looking clipboards, all offering official taxi services. This is the first test of your situational awareness. These are often unofficial drivers who pay a fee to stand inside the terminal, but operate outside the regulated pricing structures. For Elena, the potential outcome of following one of these individuals is a ride that costs $80 for a trip that should cost $20. In 2026, your safety and your wallet depend on two specific strategies. First, inside the terminal, before you even reach the exit doors, you will find the counters for Taxi Green, Taxi Direct, or Taxi 365. These are fixed-rate services. You pay at the counter with a credit card, receive a printed receipt with your driver's name and car number, and then walk to the designated pickup zone. This eliminates the need for negotiation and ensures you are in a vehicle tracked by the airport authority. Alternatively, if you have a local SIM card or a roaming plan, use Cabify. While Uber exists in Peru, historical trends among the expat and frequent traveler community suggest that Cabify maintains a higher standard of vehicle maintenance and driver vetting in Lima. Never, under any circumstances, should you simply walk out to the street and hail a random car in a major city. The legal reality of the informal taxi market in Peru is that many of these vehicles lack the mandatory SOAT insurance required to cover passengers in the event of an accident. As we move inland toward the rail system, we encounter the most misunderstood logistical hurdle in the country: the baggage limit on the trains to Machu Picchu. Whether you book with Peru Rail or Inca Rail, the standard ticket comes with a strictly enforced weight limit of 5 kilograms, or 11 pounds per person. This is not a suggestion. The trains, particularly the Vistadome and Expedition services, have limited overhead storage and no dedicated luggage cars. Imagine you are traveling with a 50-pound suitcase. You arrive at the station in Ollantaytambo, ready to board the train to Aguas Calientes, only to be told your bag cannot board. The step-by-step solution used by seasoned travelers is the luggage pivot. Most hotels in Cusco and the Sacred Valley offer complimentary, secure luggage storage for guests heading to Machu Picchu. You must pack a dedicated overnight backpack containing only your essentials for the ruins: your passport, your tickets, a change of clothes, and your rain gear. You leave your main suitcase at your hotel in the valley and travel light. If you are on a point-to-point journey and must take your luggage, you are forced to book the much more expensive Hiram Bingham luxury service or the specific luggage train, which only runs at certain times of the day. Ignoring this rule creates a high-stakes bottleneck that can result in you standing on a platform watching your train pull away while you scramble to find a storage locker. Finally, we must address the intercity bus system, which is arguably the best in South America, but requires a specific tiered understanding. In 2026, companies like Cruz del Sur and Altersa have perfected the bus comma, or sleeper bus. These are not the buses you see in the United States. We are talking about two-story vehicles with seats that recline 160 or 180 degrees, individual entertainment screens, and meal service. For a long-haul journey, such as Lima to Nazca or Cusco to Puno, these are often more comfortable than flying. However, the safety data is clear: you get what you pay for. Historical trends show that lower-tier, informal bus companies often push their drivers to work double shifts and utilize older vehicles that struggle with the steep Andean gradients. When booking, always select the VIP or suite seats on the first floor of a Cruz del Sur bus. These seats are wider, more isolated, and offer the highest level of safety. But even with the best bus and the best train ticket, there is one factor that can bring the entire country to a standstill in a matter of hours: the paro or national strike. In 2026, political and social movements in the Southern Highlands can lead to roadblocks that trap travelers for days. Understanding how to read these signs and when to pivot your entire itinerary is a skill that separates the tourists from the travelers. In the next part, we are going to dive into the Health and Hazard Masterclass. We will look at the specific parasites in the water that your filter won't catch, the hidden hygiene rules of the public restroom system that no one talks about, and the reality of the pharmatourism industry where you can buy high-grade medication over the counter, but at a significant risk to your health if you don't know the local names for common ailments. If you think a stomach bug is your only worry, wait until we talk about the Andean UV index. The Andean sun is a silent predator that most Americans underestimate until the skin on their nose begins to blister within 20 minutes of exposure. Imagine Michael, a landscape photographer from Boulder, Colorado. It is October 2026, and Michael feels right at home in high-elevation environments. He assumes his Colorado-hardened skin can handle the Peruvian Andes. However, Michael is unaware of the specific physics governing the Andean UV index. Because the Earth bulges at the equator and the Andes sit at extreme altitudes, the atmosphere above Cusco is significantly thinner than the atmosphere over the Rockies. Data indicates that UV radiation increases by approximately 10 to 12% for every 1,000 meters of elevation gain. In Cusco, which sits at 3,400 meters, the UV intensity is nearly 40% higher than at sea level. Historical trends show that the UV index in the Peruvian highlands frequently hits levels of 14 to 17, which the World Health Organization classifies as extreme. For Michael, the potential outcome of a simple 3-hour hike without a wide-brimmed hat is a second-degree burn that can lead to sunstroke, effectively ending his photography expedition before he even reaches the Sacred Valley. Step-by-step protection in 2026 requires more than just a quick application of SPF 30. You must understand the difference between chemical and mineral sunscreens in this specific environment. Chemical sunscreens often break down faster under extreme UV stress. Historical trends among experienced Andean guides suggest the use of zinc-based mineral sunscreens that provide a physical barrier. Furthermore, you must protect your eyes. High-altitude photokeratitis or snow blindness can occur even without snow because the granite rocks and whitewashed buildings of the highlands reflect a massive amount of radiation. Your sunglasses must be Category 3 or 4, with a high VLT rating to prevent permanent retinal damage. Michael's case study serves as a warning. Do not trust the cool breeze. The air in the Andes is often crisp and cold, which masks the sensation of your skin cooking. If you feel the heat of the sun on your arms, you are already too late. Now, let's navigate the most delicate topic for the US traveler: the Peruvian gastrointestinal gauntlet. Imagine Jennifer, a corporate attorney from Atlanta, who is extremely careful about what she eats. She avoids street food, only eats at high-end restaurants in Miraflores, and uses bottled water to brush her teeth. Yet, 3 days into her trip, Jennifer finds herself incapacitated by what locals call the danza de las tijeras, the scissors dance, in her stomach. The culprit wasn't the food itself, but the hidden water in her luxury experience. In 2026, many high-end establishments in Lima and Cusco use filtered water, but the plumbing infrastructure in older districts is prone to cross-contamination. Case studies of U.S. travelers show that the most common point of infection is not the tap water you drink, but the fresh salad washed in that water, or the ice cube in your pisco sour. Historical trends suggest that even the most advanced portable filters used by hikers, such as the Life Straw, are effective against bacteria like E. coli and parasites like Giardia, but they do not filter out viruses like hepatitis A or norovirus, which are small enough to pass through the fiber membranes. For a deep dive safety protocol, you must ensure that any water you consume has been either boiled for at least 3 minutes, accounting for the lower boiling point at high altitude, or treated with a high-grade UV purifier like a SteriPen. Jennifer's mistake was assuming that the price of the meal correlated with the safety of the water. In the Andes, biological safety is an infrastructural challenge that transcends the luxury market. This leads us directly into the logistical reality of the Peruvian restroom system. a topic that causes immediate culture shock for Americans. In the United States, our sewage systems are designed to handle large volumes of water and heavy-duty paper. In Peru, particularly in the highlands, the pipes are narrow and the water pressure is often insufficient to clear the trap. There is a universal rule across the country: do not flush the paper. Every stall will have a small waste bin next to the toilet. Imagine the social and plumbing catastrophe if you, out of habit, flush a wad of paper in a small family-owned guest house in Ollantaytambo. You will likely cause an immediate backup that requires a plumber to resolve. Furthermore, you must adopt the one Sol coin strategy. Public restrooms in transit hubs, markets, and even some gas stations are not free. They are manned by an attendant who will charge you 1 sol for entry and provide you with a meager 3 or 4 squares of paper. As a U.S. traveler in 2026, you should carry a dedicated hygiene kit consisting of a roll of high-quality toilet paper, travel-size biodegradable soap, and a potent hand sanitizer. The potential outcome of being caught without these items in a remote village is a lesson in humility you do not want to experience. While we are on the subject of health, we must address the phenomenon of pharmatourism. In the United States, getting an antibiotic or a high-strength altitude medication requires a doctor's visit and a pharmacy copay. In Peru, the botica or farmacia is a powerful, largely unregulated institution. You can walk into an Inca Pharma or Mi Pharma in 2026 and purchase ciprofloxacin, azithromycin, or acetazolamide over the counter without a prescription. For many Americans, this feels like a convenience. However, the risk of self-medication is profound. Historical trends show that many travelers misdiagnose their symptoms. What they think is a bacterial infection requiring antibiotics is actually a viral strain that will not respond to the medication, leading to gut biome destruction and a weakened immune system. Specifically, you will see a product called Sirachki pills marketed everywhere. These are a combination of aspirin, caffeine, and salicylamide. While they can help with the symptoms of a headache, they do not treat the underlying cause of altitude sickness like acetazolamide does. Case studies of travelers who relied solely on these over-the-counter cures show a higher rate of hospitalization because the pills mask the early warning signs of HAPE, or high-altitude pulmonary edema. Your strategy should be educational. Know the generic names of your medications. If you ask for Tylenol, they may not know what you mean, but if you ask for paracetamol, they will understand. If you need Advil, ask for ibuprofeno. Always consult with a qualified medical professional before your trip to establish a just-in-case medical kit, and use the Peruvian pharmacies only as a last resort under clear guidance. Finally, we must talk about the hidden hazard of the Peruvian urban environment: the air quality and the street dogs. In Lima, the humidity traps vehicle emissions, creating a thick layer of garua, or sea mist mixed with diesel exhaust. If you have asthma or respiratory sensitivities, the 2026 air quality in downtown Lima can be a significant trigger. Meanwhile, in cities like Cusco and Arequipa, the street dog population is a permanent fixture. While most of these animals are communal and docile, they are also territorial. Historical trends show that a small percentage of these animals carry rabies. In the US, rabies is nearly eradicated in domestic populations. In Peru, it remains a monitored health risk. Step-by-step safety means admiring the dogs from a distance and avoiding any physical contact, no matter how friendly they seem. The health and hazards of Peru are manageable, but they require a shift from the reactive mindset of a vacationer to the proactive mindset of an expeditionist. You are not just visiting a city. You are navigating a high-altitude, tropical-adjacent ecosystem that operates on a different biological clock. In the next part, we are going to dive into the cultural minefield. We will look at why your American thumbs up might be misinterpreted, the specific rules of photography when it comes to the indigenous women in their traditional pole-era skirts, and the legal reality of the ancient artifact laws that could see you facing years in a Peruvian prison for trying to bring a small piece of pottery or a smooth stone home from a ruined site. If you think the customs agent is just looking for fruit, wait until you see the X-ray tech at Jorge Chavez. The transition from the physical challenges of the Andes to the social intricacies of Peruvian culture is where many U.S. travelers face their most confusing moments. In the United States, we value efficiency, directness, and a clear separation between business and personal interaction. In Peru, the social fabric is woven with threads of formality, indirectness, and a deep-seated respect for hierarchy and history. Imagine David, a software sales executive from New Jersey. It is May 2026, and David is in a high-end textile boutique in Cusco. He is in a rush to catch a train and treats the shopkeeper with the same brisk, transactional energy he would use at a Manhattan bodega. He doesn't say hello, he doesn't make eye contact, and he immediately begins demanding prices for specific alpaca sweaters. In this scenario, David has already failed. In Peru, the concept of buenos dias or buenas tardes is not just a greeting. It is a social requirement. Historical trends show that Americans who skip the formal greeting are often perceived as education limitada, or lacking in basic upbringing. This isn't just about being polite. It affects the quality of service you receive and the prices you are quoted. For David, the potential outcome of his directness is a cold reception and a refusal to negotiate on price. To navigate the Peruvian cultural minefield, you must adopt the slow lead-in. Before asking for anything, a menu, a price, or directions, you must acknowledge the humanity of the person in front of you. A simple "Hola, buenas tardes, ¿cómo está?" opens doors that no amount of American assertiveness can budge. Furthermore, we must address the gringo label. In the United States, we are conditioned to view labels based on origin with a high degree of sensitivity. In Peru, gringo is a ubiquitous term used for almost any fair-skinned foreigner, regardless of whether they are from the USA, Canada, or Europe. It is rarely intended as an insult. Case studies of US travelers show that those who take offense at being called gringo in a market setting create an immediate wall of tension. In 2026, the term is often used affectionately or simply as a descriptor. If a vendor shouts, "Gringo ven aquí," they are inviting you to look at their wares, not attacking your heritage. Learning to lean into this linguistic shorthand rather than resisting it will significantly lower your stress levels. Now let's pivot to the ethics and legalities of photography, a major flashpoint for the 2026 traveler. Imagine Sofia, a social media influencer from Seattle. She walks through the Plaza de Armas in Cusco and sees a woman in a vibrant, multi-layered Polaris skirt holding a baby goat. Sofia instinctively raises her high-end camera and begins snapping photos, thinking she has found the perfect authentic shot. Within seconds, the woman is shielding her face and demanding money, and Sofia feels like she is being shaken down. The reality of 2026 Peru is that culture is often a primary source of income for indigenous families. Those beautiful women in traditional dress you see in tourist hubs are often there specifically for the purpose of being photographed. This is their job. The step-by-step etiquette here is clear. You must ask permission first. Disculpe, una foto, por favor? Is a minimum requirement. If they agree, a propina or tip of 2 to 5 sols is the expected historical norm. However, be aware of the deepfake and over-tourism fatigue in 2026. Many indigenous communities in more remote areas of the Sacred Valley are becoming increasingly resistant to being treated as museum exhibits. If you are in a non-tourist village and you see a ceremony or a private moment, keep your camera in your bag. The potential outcome of ignoring this boundary is a communal confrontation that can turn a peaceful hike into a legal or social nightmare. This leads us to the most high-stakes cultural and legal trap in the entire country: the ancient artifact law. Meet Kevin, a high school history teacher from Chicago. While hiking near the ruins of Ollantaytambo, Kevin finds a small, smooth piece of patterned ceramic sitting in the dirt near a trail. He assumes it's a discarded fragment of a modern replica and slips it into his pocket as a memento for his classroom. Kevin thinks he is preserving history. The Peruvian government thinks he is a looter. Under the Ley de Patrimonio Cultural de la Nación, specifically Law 28296, all archaeological remains, including small stones from Incan walls, fragments of pottery, or ancient textiles, are the property of the Peruvian state. They are categorized as national heritage, and their unauthorized removal or export is a criminal offense. In 2026, the Jorge Chávez International Airport in Lima has installed advanced AI-assisted X-ray scanners that are specifically trained to identify the density and organic composition of pre-Columbian ceramics and stone tools. Historical trends show that the "I didn't know" defense does not work in Peru. If Kevin is caught with that fragment in his checked luggage, he won't just lose the item. He will be detained by the Policía de Turismo, his passport will be confiscated, and he could face a multi-year legal battle or immediate prison time under Article 226 of the Peruvian Penal Code. The Peruvian government has a zero-tolerance policy on huaquillo, or tomb robbing, and they do not distinguish between a professional smuggler and a curious teacher. Step 1 of your artifact safety protocol: never pick anything up from a ruined site. Not a rock, not a shard, not a bone. If you want a souvenir, buy a certified replica from a reputable shop that provides a Ministry of Culture certificate or a receipt stating it is a modern handicraft. Beyond the ruins, we must discuss the religious reality. While the U.S. is increasingly secular, Peru remains deeply rooted in a blend of Catholicism and Andean spirituality. In 2026, you will see Pagos a la Tierra, or payments to the earth Pachamama, happening alongside Catholic masses. Imagine if you were to walk into a cathedral in Arequipa during a service wearing a tank top and a baseball cap while holding a selfie stick. In the US, you might get a dirty look. In Peru, you may be physically escorted out and banned from the site. This is not just about religion, it's about respeto. When entering any church, remove your hat, silence your phone, and cover your shoulders. This small gesture of cultural alignment will earn you more respect from the locals than any amount of Spanish fluency ever could. We also have to talk about the space and touch dynamic. Americans have a large bubble of personal space. Peruvians do not. In a crowded market in Lima or on a combi bus, you will be bumped, leaned on, and crowded. This is not an act of aggression or a lack of manners. It is simply the spatial reality of a high-density, communal culture. If you react with frustration or push back, you are the one being rude in the local context. Finally, let's look at the hidden language of the hands. In the United States, a thumbs up is a universal all good. In some rural parts of the Andes, it can be interpreted as a more aggressive or sexualized gesture depending on the context. Similarly, the OK sign with your fingers is a known vulgarity in many Latin American cultures. In 2026, while globalism has softened these differences, you are safer sticking to open palm gestures and a friendly nod. Understanding these cultural nuances is what transforms you from a tourist into a viajero, a traveler. You are moving through a land that has been inhabited for thousands of years, where every stone has a story and every interaction is governed by an invisible set of rules. But even if you master the social dance and avoid the artifact police, there is one more major hurdle that can break your trip: the gastronomic gamble. In the next part, we are going to dive into the world-class food scene of Peru. We will look at why ceviche can be a high-risk lunch if eaten after 2 p.m., the specific biological reality of the guinea pig delicacy that no one warns you about, and the salt trap that can lead to unexpected health issues in the high-altitude regions. If you think you've seen it all, wait until we talk about the Amazonian aphrodisiacs and the reality of drinking chicha de jora in a local village. The gastronomic landscape of Peru in 2026 is often the primary reason Americans book their flights, yet it remains one of the most misunderstood biological environments for the Western digestive system. To master the Peruvian food scene, you must first understand the golden rule of the coast: the ceviche clock. Imagine Brian, a digital nomad from Austin, Texas. He lands in Lima, drops his bags at a trendy hotel in Miraflores, and heads out for a 9 p.m. dinner. He sees ceviche on the menu of a well-reviewed restaurant and orders it, thinking he is having the quintessential Peruvian experience. By 2 a.m., Brian is experiencing a violent gastrointestinal rebellion. Brian made a fundamental error that most locals would never dream of. He ate raw fish after the sun went down. Historical trends in Peruvian coastal cities dictate that ceviche is strictly a lunch dish. The reason is grounded in logistics and biology. In 2026, the fresh catch for Lima's markets arrives at the docks between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. In the high-end restaurants, that fish is processed and served within hours. However, unlike sushi in the United States, which is often flash-frozen to kill parasites and bacteria, Peruvian ceviche is traditionally served fresh and cured only briefly in lime juice. As the day progresses, even under refrigeration, the bacterial load on raw seafood increases. By dinner time, the risk profile changes significantly. For Brian, the potential outcome of his late-night craving was a case of Vibrio or salmonellosis that cost him 3 days of his trip. Step 1 for the 2026 traveler: if the sun is down, the ceviche is off the table. Stick to cooked dishes like lomo saltado or ají de gallina for your evening meals. This leads us to a second, more dangerous biological reality: the altitude digestion crisis. Imagine Amanda, a marketing director from San Francisco. She arrives in Cusco, which sits at over 11,000 feet, and decides to celebrate her arrival with a massive 3-course meal including a heavy steak and a glass of red wine at 8 p.m. Amanda is unaware that at high altitudes, the human body prioritizes vital functions like heart rate and respiration over non-essential systems like digestion. In the thin air of the Andes, your basal metabolic rate increases, but your digestive efficiency plummets. Historical trends among high-altitude travelers show that a heavy meal late at night can lead to a condition where the food essentially sits in the stomach, fermenting rather than digesting. This causes extreme bloating, acid reflux, and a phenomenon known as periodic breathing during sleep, where you wake up gasping for air because your body is struggling to manage both the oxygen deficit and the energy-intensive process of breaking down protein. The step-by-step protocol for your first 48 hours in the mountains is simple. Eat your largest meal at lunch and keep your dinner extremely light. Think soups, crackers, or the local mate de coca. If you ignore this, you will find that a brick in the stomach feeling can ruin your sleep and exacerbate your altitude sickness. Now let's address the cultural and psychological hurdle of the guinea pig, or kiwi. In the United States, we view these animals as household pets. In the Peruvian Andes, they have been a primary protein source for over 5,000 years. For the 2026 traveler, ordering kiwi is a rite of passage, but the presentation often causes immediate plate shock. When you order kiwi shactado or kiwi al horno, it is almost always served whole, head, teeth, and claws included. Case studies of U.S. travelers show that many order the dish for the photo op, but find themselves unable to eat it because of the visual reminder of the animal's life. Beyond the psychology, there is a technical aspect to eating kiwi. It is a lean, bony animal with very little meat compared to chicken. You are expected to use your hands to navigate the ribs and small bones. If you are looking for the best culinary experience, seek out restaurants in the town of Taipan, near Cusco, which is historically famous for its roasted kiwi. Data shows that kiwi is incredibly high in protein and low in cholesterol, making it one of the healthiest meats in the world. But if you have a sensitive stomach or a strong emotional attachment to pets, you may want to opt for alpaca meat instead, which has a flavor profile similar to lean grass-fed beef. While we are in the highland villages, we must discuss the red flag mystery, Chicha de Jora. As you drive through the sacred valley, you will see houses with a long pole sticking out from the door, topped with a red plastic bag or a bouquet of red flowers. This is the universal sign that a fresh batch of chicha, a fermented corn beer, is ready. Imagine you stop to try this ancient Incan beverage. It is served in a caprol, a massive glass that looks like it holds a half-gallon of liquid. You are participating in a tradition that predates the Spanish conquest. However, from a health perspective, Chicha de Jora carries a specific historical trend of risk for the uninitiated U.S. stomach. Because it is homebrewed in communal vats and the fermentation is often short, the bacterial environment is unpredictable. There is a persistent myth that chicha is made by people chewing the corn and spitting it into the vat to initiate fermentation with saliva enzymes. While this is historically true for some ancient variations, modern Chicha de Jora in 2026 is produced through a malting process similar to beer. Nonetheless, the water source used to brew the chicha is rarely treated to U.S. standards. The potential outcome of drinking chicha in a rural village is a high risk of typhoid or hepatitis A if you are not properly vaccinated. If you want to experience the flavor without the risk, look for chicha morada, a non-fermented, boiled purple corn drink served in reputable restaurants. It is delicious, packed with antioxidants, and biologically safe because it has been boiled. As we move toward the Amazonian regions of Iquitos or Puerto Maldonado, the food scene takes a turn into the truly exotic. Here, you will encounter the suri, large fatty palm grubs that are a staple of the jungle diet. In 2026, these are often sold grilled on skewers in local markets. While they are a nutritional powerhouse, the high fat content can be a shock to a Western gallbladder. Even more intriguing are the Amazonian aphrodisiacs. You will see bottles of dark, murky liquids with names like Rompe Calzone, Britches Breaker, or Levantate Lazaro, Rise Lazarus. These are concoctions of sugarcane alcohol infused with dozens of barks, roots, and sometimes even the pheromone glands of jungle animals. While these are sold with "get healthy" claims in the local markets, they are entirely unregulated. In 2026, the legal reality is that many of these jungle tonics contain high concentrations of alkaloids that can interfere with common U.S. medications for blood pressure or anxiety. Before you sample a 7 Roots drink in a jungle bar, you must recognize that you are consuming a potent botanical cocktail with zero labeling. Finally, we have to talk about the salt trap. Many U.S. travelers notice that they feel unusually swollen or puffy after a few days in Peru. This isn't just the altitude, it's the sodium. Traditional Peruvian cuisine, while incredibly flavorful, relies heavily on salt for preservation and flavor enhancement, especially in the highlands where the air is dry. When you combine high salt intake with the dehydration caused by thin mountain air, your body begins to retain water in its tissues, a condition known as edema. To manage this, you must consciously increase your water intake to levels that may feel excessive, aiming for 3 to 4 liters a day, and avoid the urge to add extra salt to your food. The culinary journey of Peru is a masterclass in flavor, but it requires you to be an active participant in your own health. You are navigating a world where the ingredients are fresher, the spices are bolder, and the biological risks are higher than back home. But even if you eat perfectly and stay hydrated, you still have to contend with the physical environment of the ruins themselves. In the next part, we are going to dive into the Machu Picchu protocol. We will look at the new 2026 ticketing tiers that have confused even the most seasoned travel agents, the hidden stairs that can lead to a fine or expulsion if you take the wrong path, and the reality of the no bathroom policy inside the citadel that has caught thousands of travelers off guard. If you think getting to the ruins was the hard part, wait until you see the rules for staying there. The logistical labyrinth of Machu Picchu in 2026 is a far cry from the free-roaming experience of a decade ago. It is now one of the most strictly regulated archaeological sites on the planet, and for the unprepared U.S. traveler, it can feel more like a high-security clearance zone than a world wonder. Let's look at Jason, a 35-year-old financial analyst from Denver. Jason has done his homework, or so he thinks. He has his ticket printed, his passport ready, and he has successfully navigated the train from Ollantaytambo to Aguas Calientes. But Jason makes a simple human error that hundreds of Americans make every single day. He drinks a large latte and a bottle of water during the 30-minute bus ride up the winding mountain road to the Citadel entrance. As Jason clears the final security checkpoint and steps into the majestic view of the Incan ruins, his biology betrays him. He looks around for a restroom sign, only to realize a harrowing truth. There are absolutely no bathrooms inside the archaeological site of Machu Picchu. None. The only facilities are located outside the main entrance gate. In 2026, the potential outcome of leaving the site to use the restroom is the immediate termination of your visit. The rule is absolute. Once you scan your ticket and enter the circuit, there is no re-entry. If you leave to use the bathroom, you are not coming back in without a brand new, unused ticket, which is impossible to obtain on the spot as they are sold out weeks in advance. Jason's case study is a warning for your step-by-step preparation. You must use the facilities at the entrance, which cost 2 sols and require a small wait, regardless of how much you want to get inside. Historical trends show that many travelers attempt to find a discreet corner among the ruins, but the site is heavily patrolled by park rangers with whistles. If you are caught, you will not only be escorted out, but you may face a permanent ban from the site and a legal citation from the Peruvian Ministry of Culture. For the 2026 traveler, the protocol is clear. Hydrate 3 hours before your entry time, use the restroom at the gate, and accept that you will be without facilities for the next 3 to 4 hours. Now let's talk about the 2026 ticket tier system, which has become significantly more complex than in previous years. In 2026, the Peruvian government has implemented a seasonal capacity model to protect the integrity of the granite structures. You are no longer just buying a ticket to Machu Picchu, you are buying a specific circuit ticket. There are currently 4 main circuits, and if you buy the wrong one, you will not get the classic postcard view that every American expects. Circuit 1 and 2 are the most coveted. Circuit 2 is the comprehensive route that takes you to the upper platforms, offering that iconic panoramic view of the Citadel with Huayna Picchu in the background. If you are a photographer or a first-time visitor, this is the only ticket you should consider. However, historical trends show that Circuit 2 tickets sell out 4 to 5 months in advance for the peak season of June through August. If you wait too long and end up with a Circuit 3 or 4 ticket, your experience will be vastly different. Circuit 3, known as the Royalty Path, stays primarily in the lower sections of the ruins, focusing on the Temple of the Sun and the agricultural terraces. You will be physically closer to the stonework, but you will never reach the higher ground required for the classic photo. Circuit 4 is often bundled with the Huayna Picchu hike. While the hike is a life-changing experience, the circuit itself is restricted to the lower levels. Many Americans arrive with the Circuit 4 ticket, thinking it includes full access, only to realize they are barred from the upper Instagram spots. Imagine the frustration of flying thousands of miles only to be told by a ranger that your $500 a day luxury tour doesn't allow you to stand in the one spot you came to see. The 2026 entry times are also enforced with surgical precision. Your ticket has a 1-hour window. If your ticket says 8 a.m., you cannot enter at 7:45 a.m., and if you show up at 9:15 a.m., you may be denied entry entirely depending on the current park volume. The step-by-step reality is that you must be in the bus queue in Aguas Calientes at least 90 minutes before your stamped entry time. The bus queue itself is a logistical beast. Even with a pre-purchased $24 round-trip bus ticket, the line can stretch for several blocks. If you are a U.S. traveler used to the efficiency of Disney Genie Plus or Fast Passes, prepare for a shock. There is no fast track for the Machu Picchu bus. Once inside, you must understand the one-way flow policy. In 2026, the trails are strictly unidirectional. This means you cannot backtrack to see something you missed. If you walk past the Temple of the Condor and realize you didn't take a video, you cannot turn around. The rangers will physically block your path and usher you forward. This creates a high-stakes environment for photography. You must be intentional with every step. If you move too fast, your tour is over in 90 minutes. If you move too slow, you will be pressured by the groups behind you. The potential outcome of a poorly timed walk is a rushed experience that feels more like a conveyor belt than a spiritual journey. Furthermore, we must address the prohibited items list, which has expanded in 2026. Selfie sticks, tripods, and any form of professional camera stabilization are strictly forbidden without a specialized commercial permit that costs thousands of dollars. If you pull out a collapsible selfie stick, you will hear a sharp blast from a ranger's whistle within seconds. Large backpacks, anything over 20 liters, are also prohibited and must be left in the lockers at the gate for a fee. Even your clothing is subject to scrutiny. Historical trends show that travelers wearing costumes, waving national flags, or attempting performative social media stunts are frequently removed from the park. Machu Picchu is treated as a sacred site, not a backdrop for your brand. Then there is the guide requirement. While the law has fluctuated over the years, in 2026, it is highly recommended and often practically mandatory to have a licensed guide for your first entry. A guide does more than just explain the history. They navigate the circuit rules for you. They know exactly where you can stand, where you can't, and how to time your movement to avoid the largest crowds. However, do not hire a guide at the gate. The historical trend for gate-hired guides is a wide variance in quality and English proficiency. Instead, book a guide at least 48 hours in advance through a reputable agency in Cusco or Ollantaytambo. The 2026 experience is about precision and respect for the bureaucratic machine. If you treat the Citadel with the reverence it deserves and follow the rigid step-by-step protocols of the circuits, the potential outcome is a profound connection to Incan history that transcends the logistics. But even if you master the ruins, you still have the rest of the country to navigate. And that is where the physical safety and the street reality of Peru come into play. In the next part, we are going to dive into the Safety and Security Masterclass. We will look at the specific neighborhoods in Lima that you should never enter even during the day, the fake police scams that target Americans in Cusco, and the reality of the 2026 crime trends involving high-value electronics. If you think you're safe because you're in a tourist area, wait until we talk about the express kidnapping tactics and how to identify a legitimate security official from a predator. We will also cover the nightmare at the airport scenarios that happen when U.S. travelers forget the specific rules about carry-on liquids and local souvenirs. Your physical safety is the final hurdle in this masterclass. To navigate the urban safety landscape of Peru in 2026, you must abandon the assumption that tourist-heavy areas are inherently safe zones. In the United States, we are accustomed to a general level of police visibility and a predictable pattern of street crime. In Peru, particularly in Lima and Cusco, the risks are often surgical, highly organized, and dependent on your situational awareness. Let's look at Christopher, a 30-year-old software engineer from Seattle. It is March 2026, and Christopher is staying in a high-end Airbnb in Miraflores. He feels secure because the streets are well lit, and there are private security guards on every corner. However, Christopher wants to find an authentic local market he saw on a travel blog. He pulls out his phone, follows a GPS route, and unknowingly crosses the invisible border from the safe district of San Isidro into the neighboring district of La Victoria. Christopher's case study highlights the first critical rule: the Lima bubble is fragile. Historical trends show that the majority of violent crime against U.S. tourists occurs when they inadvertently wander into specific red zones like parts of Callao, La Victoria, or San Martin de Porres. In 2026, the potential outcome of following a GPS shortcut through these areas is a high-stakes confrontation. To prevent this, Your step-by-step security protocol must involve pre-mapping your route and identifying the major avenues that act as buffers. If you see the visual cues change, increased graffiti, bars on every window, and a lack of municipal cleaning crews, you have likely crossed a boundary. In 2026, the most effective tool for Christopher would have been to use a dedicated transit app like Cabify rather than walking between districts, as the vehicle acts as a protective shell between the safety of Miraflores and the unpredictability of the surrounding areas. Furthermore, we must address the 2026 reality of El Arrebato, or the high-speed phone snatch. In the United States, we often walk down the street with our phones in our hands, checking maps or texting. In Peru, your smartphone is the most liquid asset a street criminal can target. Historical trends show a massive spike in snatch-and-grab thefts involving motorcycles and mototaxis. Imagine you are standing on a sidewalk in Barranco, taking a photo of a mural. A motorcycle with 2 passengers mounts the curb, the passenger leans over, rips the phone from your hand, and they are gone in less than 3 seconds. This isn't just a loss of hardware. In 2026, your phone is your gateway to your bank accounts, your travel documents, and your identity. The step-by-step strategy to mitigate this is the zero visibility rule. Never use your phone on a public sidewalk or near the open window of a car. If you need to check your location, step inside a store, a pharmacy, or a cafe. If you are in a taxi, keep your windows rolled up and your phone out of sight. Historical trends among frequent travelers suggest using a dummy phone, an older, cheaper model, for navigation on the street, while keeping your primary device secured in an internal pocket. The potential outcome of ignoring this is not just the cost of the phone, but the logistical nightmare of being in a foreign country without access to two-factor authentication or your digital boarding passes. Now let's pivot to the fake police phenomenon in Cusco. Imagine James, a retired teacher from Vermont. While walking back to his hotel near the San Blas district, he is approached by 2 men in civilian clothes who flash badges and identify themselves as the Policia de Turismo. They claim there has been a report of counterfeit US dollars being circulated in the area and demand to see James's passport and his cash for verification. In his desire to be a law-abiding guest, James hands over his wallet. The men inspect the bills, return the wallet, and walk away. It is only later that James realizes several $100 bills have been swapped for sophisticated counterfeits or simply removed. The reality of 2026 security is that legitimate Peruvian police, particularly the tourist police who wear distinctive white caps and vests, will almost never stop you in civilian clothes to ask for your money. Historical trends show that these imposters rely on the American respect for authority. The step-by-step defense is simple. If anyone in plain clothes identifies themselves as police and asks for your valuables, do not comply. Demand to see their official carnet or identification card, and insist on walking to the nearest commissariat or police station before showing them anything. In most cases, the mere mention of going to a station will cause the scammers to flee. Real police interactions in Peru are formal and rarely involve the physical handling of your currency. We must also discuss the Secuestro Express, or express kidnapping, a tactic that has evolved in 2026. Imagine Linda from Atlanta. She is running late for a dinner reservation and decides to hail a taxi on the street instead of using an app. This is the entry point for the crime. A few blocks into the ride, the driver stops under the guise of a mechanical issue, and 2 accomplices enter the back seat. Linda is not taken to a secret hideout. She is taken on a tour of various ATMs and forced to withdraw her maximum daily limit from each. Once her accounts are drained, she is dropped off in a remote part of the city, often without her shoes or phone to prevent her from seeking immediate help. Case studies of this crime show that the primary vulnerability is the street taxi. In 2026, the legal reality of the taxi market remains highly informal. To avoid this potential outcome, you must strictly adhere to the use of radio taxis or vetted apps like Cabify or Uber. If you are at a restaurant, ask the staff to call a taxi de confianza for you. It may cost $5 more, but that premium is essentially an insurance policy against a life-altering trauma. Finally, we arrive at the nightmare at the airport, involving souvenirs and carry-on restrictions. Meet Robert from Phoenix. He has had a wonderful trip and has purchased several bags of coca tea leaves as gifts for his friends in the US, believing that because they were sold in a legitimate grocery store in Cusco, they are legal. He also bought a small, beautiful Incan textile from a street vendor. At Jorge Chávez International Airport, Robert is pulled aside. First, the coca tea. While legal and culturally significant in Peru, The coca leaf is a Schedule II controlled substance in the United States. In 2026, U.S. Customs and Border Protection utilizes highly sensitive chemical sniffers. If you land in Miami or LAX with coca leaves, you could face federal drug trafficking charges, regardless of your intent. Second, the textile. Security officials flag it as a potential national heritage item. Because Robert bought it from a street vendor and has no official receipt or export certificate from the Ministry of Culture, the item is confiscated, and he is fined for attempting to smuggle cultural property. The protocol for the 2026 traveler is absolute. Never bring coca products, tea, candy, or flour back to the U.S. For any high-quality souvenirs, only buy from shops that provide a formal boleta or factura that clearly states the item is a modern handicraft. Your safety in Peru is a matter of discipline, not luck. By understanding the historical trends of these crimes and implementing a step-by-step defensive strategy, you ensure that your trip is remembered for its beauty rather than its bottlenecks. But even with a secure wallet and a safe ride, there is one final piece of the puzzle that governs your entire experience: the digital and social protocol. In the final part of this masterclass, we are going to look at the 2026 SIM card scam, the reality of the Peruvian Tinder trap for solo male travelers, and the specific ways to leverage the Peruvian legal system if things do go wrong. We will also summarize the golden checklist that you need to review 24 hours before you head to the airport. This is the final layer of your Peruvian blueprint. The digital infrastructure of Peru in 2026 is a double-edged sword for the American traveler. Connectivity is no longer a luxury. It is the fundamental utility that powers your navigation, your payments, and your security. However, the way you obtain this connectivity can determine whether your personal data remains secure or becomes a commodity on the dark web. Imagine Tyler, a 34-year-old freelance designer from Brooklyn. Tyler lands at Jorge Chávez International Airport and is immediately drawn to the bright, convenient kiosks in the baggage claim area offering tourist SIMs. He pays $40 for a package that claims to offer unlimited data. Tyler provides his passport for registration, unaware that in 2026, a growing historical trend involves secondary retailers using those passport scans to register multiple fraudulent lines under a traveler's identity. The potential outcome for Tyler is not just a high price for data, but a compromised identity that could lead to his passport being flagged in national databases for activities he never authorized. To avoid this, your step-by-step digital protocol must prioritize eSIM technology before you even leave the United States. In 2026, providers like Airlo or Holofly offer Peruvian data packages that bypass the need for physical registration at a kiosk. If your phone is not eSIM compatible, your second best option is to wait until you reach a formal, branded store for Claro, Movistar, or Entel in a district like Miraflores. These flagship stores are held to higher data privacy standards than the independent airport kiosks. When you register at a flagship store, ensure you receive a printed receipt that links your specific SIM card exit number to your passport. This creates a paper trail that protects you from the ghost line scams that have become prevalent in the 2026 travel landscape. As you become digitally active, you must also navigate the high-stakes world of social and romance safety. Meet Kevin, a 38-year-old software developer from Boston. It is July 2026, and Kevin is traveling solo through Lima. He opens a popular dating app to meet locals for a drink. He connects with someone who appears to be a fellow professional and agrees to meet at a bar in a popular tourist area. During the evening, Kevin's date suggests they move to a more private location. Kevin, lulled into a sense of security by the upscale environment, agrees. Historical trends in major South American hubs, including Lima and Cusco, show a persistent risk of sedative-assisted robberies. Case studies from 2026 indicate that criminals often use substances like scopolamine, known locally as burundanga, which can be surreptitiously added to a drink or even a piece of food. The potential outcome is a state of passive compliance, where the victim willingly hands over their PIN codes and jewelry, only to wake up 12 hours later with no memory of the event and empty bank accounts. Step-by-step safety for the solo U.S. traveler means following the public-only rule. Never leave your drink unattended, even for a moment, and never move from a public venue to a private one with someone you have just met. If a situation feels too good to be true, it almost certainly is. In 2026, the safest way to meet people is through organized group tours or established expat meetups where there is a layer of social accountability. If, despite your best efforts, something does go wrong, you must know how to leverage the Peruvian legal system. Imagine Jessica from Denver, who has her bag snatched while sitting at a cafe in Arequipa. Jessica's first instinct is to find a regular police officer on the street. However, in Peru, the Policía Nacional is a massive bureaucracy. For a traveler, your lifeline is iPeru. In 2026, iPeru has expanded its digital presence, offering a 24-hour WhatsApp assistance line that acts as a bridge between tourists and the authorities. If you are a victim of a crime, your first step is to contact iPeru. They will provide you with a bilingual advocate who can guide you through the process of filing a denuncia or police report. You must understand that without a formal denuncia document, your travel insurance will not reimburse you, and the U.S. Embassy will have limited grounds to provide emergency documentation. Historical trends show that the process of filing a report in a local precinct can take 6 to 8 hours of waiting in a cramped office. To expedite this, ask the iPeru representative for the location of the nearest Comisaría de Turismo, or tourist police station. These specific units are trained to handle foreign visitors and often have English-speaking officers on staff. Case studies of successful recovery show that travelers who remain calm, provide specific serial numbers for their electronics, and insist on receiving a stamped copy of the report are far more likely to see a resolution or a successful insurance claim. Now, we must prepare for the final 24 hours of your journey. The Golden Checklist. As your trip in 2026 draws to a close, you face a series of administrative hurdles that can make or break your departure. First, we revisit the IGV tax exemption we discussed in the early parts of this masterclass. When you check out of your final hotel, you must verify that the 18% tax was not added to your bill. If the hotel claims they cannot find your digital entry record, you must show them the screenshot of your TAM virtual entry. Historical trends show that some hotels will attempt to charge the tax at the last minute, betting that the American traveler will be too rushed to catch the flight to argue. Second, you must manage your remaining currency. Most U.S. travelers make the mistake of trying to spend down their sols at the airport, where prices are marked up by as much as 300%. A bottle of water that costs 2 sols in the city will cost 15 sols at the gate. Conversely, trying to exchange sols back to US dollars at the airport kiosks will result in a significant loss due to predatory exchange rates. The step-by-step solution is to visit a Casa de Cambio in the city the day before your flight. Convert your sols back into high-denomination US dollars, ensuring they are once again in pristine, unblemished condition. If you have a small amount of change left, use it to tip your final driver or the hotel staff, as coins are difficult to exchange once you land back in the States. Finally, we look at the airport transit for your return. In 2026, the traffic in Lima has reached a critical mass due to ongoing infrastructure projects. For a 10 p.m. international flight, you should be leaving your hotel in Miraflores or Barranco no later than 5:30 p.m. The potential outcome of underestimating the Costa Verde traffic is a missed $3,000 flight. Once at the airport, remember the souvenir audit we covered. Double-check your bags for any coquetry or potential cultural heritage items. In 2026, the scanning technology is more intrusive than ever, and a single stray tea bag in the lining of your suitcase can lead to a secondary inspection that will cause you to miss your boarding window. You have now completed the ultimate masterclass for traveling to Peru from the USA in 2026. You have moved from the physiological challenges of the high Andes to the bureaucratic mazes of the Incan ruins, and through the urban safety landscapes of the coast. You are no longer just a tourist. You are a traveler equipped with the data, the historical context, and the step-by-step protocols to navigate one of the most complex and rewarding destinations on Earth. But remember, the Andes are never truly mastered. They are only experienced. Your journey is part of a larger story of cultural exchange and personal growth. As you stand at the departure gate, looking back at the peaks of the Andes or the gray mist of the Pacific, you realize that the Peru pivot isn't just a travel strategy. It's a mindset that will serve you in every corner of the globe. Your blueprint is complete, but the true adventure begins the moment you step off that plane and breathe in the thin, ancient air of the Sacred Valley.